If you go through some of the best tactics on Football Manager, you notice that they have the look for the underlap instruction selected. What does that actually mean? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. And to understand the underlap instruction, we need to look at the meaning of the overlaps and underlaps in Football Manager. After that, we'll figure out the right situation in which you should use underlaps and overlaps. Then we'll look at the possible player role combinations that you can use to trigger underlapping and overlapping runs in Football Manager. So what does overlap and underlap mean? Well, on Football Manager, it's labeled as overlap right and overlap left. That's look for the overlap right and look for the overlap left. But what this instruction does is to actually tell a player that is playing on the left or the right flank to actually hold on to possession of the ball and wait for another player to make a run in support ahead of him. Now this run is known as an overlap. Usually this is coming from a fullback, and then you have a winger that is playing on the left or the right hand side. It could be an inverted winger, it could be an inside forward, it could be a normal wide playmaker or winger that is playing on the left hand side. This player, when he's in possession of the ball, is going to hold on to the ball and wait for his fullback or wingback to actually get ahead of him and make a run outside. The game says that this can happen when a winger is actually holding on to the ball and waiting for the fullback to overlap. But in my experience, I have a feeling that even a central midfielder can also hold on to possession of the ball and wait for the fullback to actually make an overlapping run before playing the ball to that player. But by definition, it means that the player that is playing an attacking role on the wings, usually the left or the right flank, is actually going to hold on to possession and wait for a fullback or wingback to actually make the run ahead. Now, there are certain attributes that actually support the overlapping runs in Football Manager. Now, if you have a wingback or fullback that has very good off-the-ball attributes and also pace, acceleration, anticipation, this player is well suited to play with the overlapping instruction selected. And it's very useful if you have a wide player ahead of him that is not very fast. In case you're using an advanced playmaker on the wings, somebody like that, you could ask that advanced playmaker or inside forward that is not very pacey to hold on to possession of the ball and allow the faster wingback to actually get ahead of him and then be the one to attack the space in behind. Now, the underlap instruction is a direct opposite of the overlap instruction. What the underlap instruction asks the player to do is to hold on to possession of the ball, and instead of waiting for a player that, like a fullback, that is making an overlapping run on the outside, instead this player is actually going to hold on to the ball and wait for a player that is making a run from the center of the pitch. That's the deeper areas in the middle of the pitch. A good example of players that actually make runs, deeper runs from inside the middle of the pitch, players like the segundo volante, players like the box-to-box midfielder, the mezzala, and the central midfielder on attack duty. These roles that are quite dynamic in Football Manager, especially in the middle of the field, they are the ones that tend to make those underlapping runs. So if you have those kind of players, you can ask the wide player to actually hold on to possession of the ball and allow those players make those runs from deep, and then you can play a pass into that player. That is kind of how the underlap works. Now, you notice that I didn't mention the fullback and the inverted wingback. In all honesty, I feel Football Manager created the underlap instruction for inverted wingbacks in mind, because they kind of came in the same period in 2018 when the team instructions were kind of revamped. What happens with the inverted wingback is that the inverted wingback is still going to cut inside into the middle of the field. It turns out the underlap instruction is not directly meant for him. The underlap instruction is meant for any player that is making a run from deep, which also includes the inverted wingback. It's just that it's not what I thought when I meant that the inverted fullback was the sole user of the underlapping runs. You get what I mean? Now, with that being said, if you have a fullback that is right-footed and is playing on the left-hand side and has the ability to cut inside, you can use the look for the underlap run to actually find him and then get him into space. You can also use this instruction if the attacking player is not very fast and not very good at passing, but he has the ability to actually retain possession of the ball. And then if you have a fullback that has very good passing ability, someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold for Liverpool, you can actually hold on to possession for him and then ask a player that is playing out wide to actually play the ball into him so you can create more chances, because he's slightly a more technical player. I know that Salah is really technical for Liverpool, to be honest, but I'm just trying to explain how the underlap works in this situation. Now, another important thing you need to learn about this overlap and underlap is that it has an effect on the individual player mentality. So if you head in here and you look at one of these players, let's say the wing back here that is on support duty, if you go ahead and check his individual mentality, you're going to see that the player has an individual mentality that is balanced at the moment. And that is very similar to what the team has it as the mentality. The mentality is currently set to balance. But look what happens when we go ahead and change the instruction and add look for the overlap. Looking for the overlap on the left hand side, if you go over to the fullback's instruction, you will see that his mentality has changed to positive. This is kind of how the overlap instruction affects the way the player actually behaves on the pitch. So you can intentionally make a fullback to be a bit more attacking. Now, if you go ahead and switch the mentality of the team to generally positive and go back to that fullback, you're going to notice that the fullback now has a mentality of attacking. So the overlap instruction essentially makes your fullback a bit more attacking. So what if you're looking for the underlap? How does that affect the player in the middle? Does that affect his mentality in any way? So let's figure that out. We have a register here in this system. If you look at the register, let's get over to his internal player instructions. You can see that the register has the positive mentality assigned to him. If we go over to the in possession instructions and then look for the underlap instruction, let's just go ahead and peep at the register and see what happens to his players. You can see that, okay, he currently still stays on positive, so he has very limited influence on him right now, maybe because it's a back three system. Let's just look at our alternative system here. If it's a 4-3-3, and we have a central midfielder here on attack duty, and currently his normal mentality is set to very attacking, so it's not really going to have much impact. We're going to have to drop him to a role that is maybe a central midfielder on support duty, and then have the team play on a balanced mentality. If we go over to the central midfielder now, we can see that his instruction is set to balanced. And then we can look at the inverted winger. He's an inverted winger on the attack. Let's go over to the team instructions and then ask the player to look for the underlap on the right hand side. If we go over to the central midfielder on support duty in this sense, his mentality is still balanced. So the underlap is not affecting him as much as I thought. So let's look at the fullback that is playing on support duty. This fullback has a cut inside instruction. With the underlap set to the right hand side, we can go over to the fullback and say that the fullback is currently has a mentality of positive. If I switch the underlap, if I go over and uncheck the underlap instruction on the right hand side and then go over to the fullback here and look at his instruction, his mentality has now changed to balance. So it has a direct correlation with the player that is playing as a fullback, mostly the fullbacks. Central midfielder on support duty, perhaps not so much as I thought. Now, before we actually go, we need to answer the question as to why most overpowered tactics tend to have that look for the underlap instruction selected. So here we're looking at the EF424 IFHP overpowered tactic. It's a 424 system, one of the very best on Football Manager. You notice here that there isn't actually a look for the underlap instruction selected. But if you go over to the fullbacks that are playing on attack duty now, you can see that the fullbacks have the instruction that says cut inside with the ball. This means that if you go ahead and turn on that look for the underlap instruction either on the left or the right hand side for the players that are playing as fullbacks, these fullbacks are going to get all the way up, and then it's going to also encourage your inside forwards, which have the hold up ball instruction selected for them, to also wait and allow the fullbacks to actually get into the half spaces, and then you can exploit the other team that way. This actually works well. By default, the instruction for look for the underlap isn't really selected, but if you look at the inside forward here, hold up the ball is actually selected for him, and then the fullback that is playing behind him has the cut inside instruction selected, cut inside with the ball, which means that the underlap is naturally happening. We see a similar pattern here with the gaps version 4 tactic, and this one there is also an underlap on the right hand side, but you notice that the inverted wingback on support duty is playing on the left, so this underlap is actually happening on the right. So if you look at the inside forward here, he has been asked to hold up the ball, he's playing on attack duty, and then you can see that the fullback behind him is also asked to cut inside with the ball. That underlap is now happening on the right hand side. So this is what most overpowered tactics tend to do on FM 2024. Now, what role combinations can you use for the overlap and the underlap instruction? We'll start with the overlap then. What I've noticed and what I've been using on Football Manager is that a very good combination is to have the inverted winger or the inside forward playing alongside a wing back on support duty, a fullback on attack duty, or maybe a complete wing back on support. This overlap is going to happen organically, and something I need to mention right now about the overlap and the underlaps is that based on the roles that you go on to select in the game, the players are still going to overlap and look for the overlap. It's just that when you select the option that says look for the overlap, the team is going to intentionally hold on to possession on purpose just to wait for that fullback to actually make the run. But if you don't have it selected, the team is just going to go about playing it organically, and when the overlap happens, the player is still going to play the pass. You can also play an advanced playmaker on support ahead of an attacking fullback or attacking wingback. For underlaps, I tend to pick an attacking player that is going to stay quite wide. Even if you're using the inverted winger, it tends to just add the stay wider instruction for him, so you can create that space for the runner from deep to actually get into. So I tend to use, like I said, the inverted winger or the winger, and then pair it with somebody like an inverted wingback that's playing on attack duty or support duty. Or you can also look for the fullback on attack duty and ask him to cut inside. You can also have the underlap work with a box-to-box midfielder. The defensive midfielder on support duty that has that get forward instruction can also work for the underlaps I've noticed on Football Manager, and also Segundo Volante is another powerful role. Paired with somebody that is playing out wide, the box-to-box midfielder and the mezzala can also make very good underlapping runs into the half spaces. So that is my understanding of the overlap and the underlap instructions on Football Manager. If you found this useful, do also leave a like on the video, and if you have any more additional questions about Football Manager and Football Manager tactics, you can let me know in the comment section and I'll try to work on those videos as well. And you never know, maybe I've already worked on that video. You can go ahead and check the channel and search for all of my other videos and then check out in case I've actually done that before. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.